Hey y'all, it's your girl So Fab here with Coach Block. As you guys all know, we are kicking off our Women Impacting Now Win series for the month of March. As you know, it's Women's International History Month. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to highlight some amazing women and amazing levels in their life that are doing just great things. So yesterday we had Lauren McCullough of Trauma and Aurora Flow. Today we have our own little superstar in the building, Miss Liz McLean. She's in here. She's the executive director of the Holt Fundraising Foundation. And I can't wait for you guys to get more details about that because this is definitely a foundation that hits close to home for us. So we're going to tell you a little bit about her story, her journey, some of the challenges that she may have faced just getting to this leadership role, and hopefully some more gems that we can drop for you guys. So without further ado, hey Liz, how you doing, honey?
Hey Kim, how are you? Thanks
so
for
glad
having
to
me.
see you.
I got to tell you before we really dive in, this is the manifestation of a childhood dream. I wanted to have my own radio show.
Shut the front door.
Yep. So my brother, I stole, had this like Fisher Price little tape cassette, you know, early 90s, late 80s, and it had a microphone attached to it. And I would sit at the bottom of the staircase and I would have a whole radio show
By yourself?
by myself. By myself. It wasn't even about the music. I just wanted to talk. I don't know what I was talking about, but I've done some podcasts. So this is my first live radio show.
Yay!
So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Listen, it is truly happy to do it. We're happy to do it. And I'm just glad that you took the time that you were able to sit with us. I mean, because you're doing some amazing things. As soon as we met you, and we came up with this concept, we were like, let's hope that Liz will want to jump on board, because the foundation in itself is doing amazing things. But before we get to that, just let everyone know a little bit about your journey and how you even got to this point.
Oh, I don't know that we have enough time for that. But the short version of a very long story is Raleigh born and raised. And I always thought I was destined to go live in a bigger city. And so really even through college, I thought I was out of here.
Really? Where were you going to go?
DC.
Okay.
I had this, what I now can see is I was always looking for a way to make the world a better place, which makes me sound like a saint, and that's not it. But I wanted to leave a mark, right? I wanted to be a part of doing that. And so I thought that the way to do that was getting people elected to public office. Your face, I know. Getting people elected to public office and helping them serve in that capacity. And so that was what I majored in school. And the place to do that in our country is Washington, D.C. So that's where I was. Eye on the prize is where I was headed. And I was determined to graduate college with a job. And that job ended up being in Raleigh. And so I loved it. I worked at a really amazing small company and learned a whole lot of things that I never thought I would need to know again. Turns out I needed to know all of them at different times of my life, and did that for about 5 years. And it was really just in a season of, we were in a recession. I was early 20s, really trying to figure out what was happening with my career. And what I realized was I needed something other than what I did 9 to 5 every day. And so I started volunteering in the community and got plugged in. Maybe initially because I thought that's what you were supposed to do professionally, right? Just to sort of check the box. But I got plugged into some really amazing organizations and really loved it. And 5 years later, it was time for a change. And I went from getting people elected to working in state government after people got elected. And very quickly realized I learned a lot of really great things. But once you kind of see things behind the scenes, it's a little bit harder to unsee it.
Absolutely.
And here we are for Women's History Month. And no shade to Ken over there. And there are some really amazing men out there. But they are not always the best coworkers.
Right.
And I was young and just assumed that people would advocate for me. And that was probably the time that I started to learn that you had to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
And it was a struggle because the other women that I was working with that were around me also were either figuring that out or were trying to do it and not necessarily being successful in it.
Exactly.
And government and politics is real toxic and everybody knows your business. And I decided I didn't like that and I wanted out and went to go sell office furniture.
That's a huge 180. Like,
huge shift. Huge shift. And what I loved about that was I got to do something creative for the first time in a really long time professionally. I got to show up and I got to talk to people about how do you use your space? Right. We even were talking about your space in here when I walked in. And space really helps people show up like they want to show up and how they need to show up, right? And not every company is going to spend the money and the time doing it, but those that were really great clients and really great partners. And I actually worked with a lot of co-working spaces because they were trying to foster creativity.
Shout out to AU.
And so I did that and again, sort of realized that I was struggling to advocate for myself, that I got put into something that I didn't necessarily want to keep doing and honestly didn't know how to get out of it. And I don't know, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
No.
Okay, so it's this ancient personality mapping test. I'm gonna need you both to go take a test. I'm gonna send you a code and report back what you are. You're not supposed to type people. But I was doing a lot of just self-searching.
Absolutely.
Trying to figure out who I was, reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, spending a lot of time in my car in a sales job. So listening to all the things to tell me how to show up better in the world. And I was really trying to do that personally and really struggling to do it professionally. And, you know, when you start to do something different in one aspect of your life, but it's not showing up in that other part of your life where you spend a ton of time, there starts to become this tension and this rub. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know who to talk to about that. And it just started to become really uncomfortable. And so basically, long story short, after all these meandering paths, I burned out and was striving for a lot of perfection, looking for a lot of recognition from other people, not knowing how to own my own stuff and celebrate and pause, and also didn't know how to say no. And really, burnout looked like not being able to get up off the floor, right? And being really unhappy and not knowing, you know, when you're in that place and you're so unhappy and everybody can give you all the good advice and well-meaning advice, it doesn't matter because you can't hear it, right? Exactly. And you don't know how to put one foot in front of the other. And I looked around one day and realized that I had cultivated this beautiful home, didn't care about any of the things in it. I valued a few things, but I didn't value the stuff. And was striving to create a space that I didn't even invite people into. I wasn't making the room for them, right? And decided I was going to sell it all, store what I was going to keep. Ken's face right now is amazing. Like, what? And was really just looking for jobs. I had given myself that year till Labor Day. And I either was going to find a job or I was going to quit the job I had. My lease was going to run out. And I was going to call this friend that owned a wine bar and I was just going to go bartend until I could figure it out. Right. I mean, that's where I was. Right. And I still this whole time had been doing the volunteer thing and showing up in the community. And so what people saw that I was struggling to see for myself was you could take all these skill sets you have and you could go put them into the nonprofit community. And I was so resistant to that. I'd gotten to a certain place in my career, a certain lifestyle. I had bills I had to pay.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't figure out how to go from one to the other. And it was that moment of sitting on the floor and saying, okay, well, the way I can do this is I can sell the stuff. I can go knock on mom's door and see if she'll let me move into her house while I figure it out. And that was not where I saw my life at 32 years old and what I wanted to do. I'm so grateful for a mom that let me come live in her house and let me figure it out and let me catch my breath. And it certainly wasn't the easiest journey, And I like to say I swung from one end of the pendulum to the other. I went from pitching Fortune 50 companies, global furniture contracts,
Right.
multi-millions of dollars, multiple year contracts, to helping people donate lamps out of their cars to a local nonprofit. I mean, I was still in furniture, but it was a huge shift. And so after a little bit of time, it was time to say, okay, I've caught my breath. I know a little bit more about who I am. I've cleared out the noise enough to say, okay, what's next? Went on vacation. My uncles have this beautiful home in California. You could look at the Pacific Ocean. I did all the soul searching, made all the plans.
Journaled all of that.
It was March of 2020.
COVID.
And so I came back from that trip the week before everything shut down. And I thought, this is no longer my decision, right? When I made the decision before to cut my salary in half and move forward, I was in control. I could have changed it if I wanted to, right? This felt so out of everyone's control. It's so out of my control. And it was really hard to find any motivation. I think we all struggled with that. But all that work I had been doing on myself to figure out what was going to make me happy vocationally, what was going to make me happy as a person, paid off because I had the roadmap. So eventually I was able to say, okay, there are things out there. Can I start looking for them? And I know this story is so long, but how I ended up at Holt, I tell everyone, it was just good old-fashioned networking. So backtrack to that first job out of college. I didn't know whether I wanted to go back to school. And so I'd gone and gotten a paralegal certificate. I went to Duke at night 2 days a week for 6 months. Turns out I don't like homework. And so in that, I was networking with women that had gone to the college that I had gone to who worked for law firms. A lot of them did marketing. They were like, you're good with people. You might be okay at this research paralegal thing, but we actually think you should look for marketing jobs within law firms. And so I got connected to a woman who is now my coworker. And we had lunch 12 years ago. And I didn't know where that was going to go. And it didn't turn into a job opportunity at the time. But then turned out we volunteered with the same organization, kept seeing each other. And here's the funny thing. When I think about the way that women don't advocate for themselves, here I was in the pandemic, not knowing how to advocate for myself outside of what's going to keep me safe and healthy. We saw each other probably every other week for a couple of months because we were hanging out at the same bar our friends had opened in January, wanting them to succeed during the pandemic. I knew they were looking to hire, that they had talked about this job. She wanted to know why I wasn't asking her about the job, and I wondered why she wasn't telling me about the job, right? And so that went on for a couple of months, and people would bring up, hey, you know, the Holt brothers are looking for a new executive director. And I'd say, no, they're not. That's Merritt's job. And finally, it took a friend who had lunch with her, called me and said, hey, I found your next job. And I went, that's not a job. Everybody keeps saying it is. I can't find a job posting. I haven't seen a job description. He said, I'm looking at the job description. I said, where'd you get that? Well, it came from Merritt, my now coworker. And that really started opening the door for a conversation just to see what was going on and what they were doing and how I got there. And so if I look back on it, right, I told you the story that takes a lot of twists and turns.
Absolutely.
What I know about it is it helped me really figure out who I was. And all of those skills that I use today, I learned at each of those different jobs and each of those other roles, collected people along the way, right? And built a network that I'm able to use now for a variety of reasons, both personally and professionally. But ultimately, it was that I was always looking for something that meant that I was leaving a legacy and an impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to go back to you and your journey, because there's so many little notes and nuggets that you left for people that they can relate to. Just not having a sense of identity, not really knowing, the map of where to go. I mean, let's face it, we all have no idea what we're doing. We're just trying to figure it out as we go along. But you talked about how you just were burnt out. You're laying on the floor, mentally exhausted, not quite sure of where your journey is going to lead you. And then somehow you find yourself out of that. But there's so many people, and especially women, because we put on our mask every single day. We get out and we go, and face the world and do what we got to do. But we're fighting that battle internally, and no one seems to know. What is one tip that you can give to women to kind of help them say, okay, let me put one foot in front of the other?
I think you've really got to find 3 or so safe people that you can feel like you can breathe around. And 3 seems like not a lot of people, but I think for most of us, that's a big ask, right? Because it's hard enough to even admit to the person in the mirror that you're not okay or
Absolutely.
You're overwhelmed, right?
Yes.
And I think the way that I have found those people, thankfully, I started to find a lot more of them before the pandemic, because you find yourself around the people that have known you your whole life. And it's a lot harder to take that mask off initially to them. It's a little bit easier to do it to new people. And what worked for me was learning how I felt in their presence. So did my nervous system feel more relaxed? Could I actually take a deep breath? What happened if I gave them an honest answer rather than the answer that they wanted? And I don't know how you do that outside of community, right? And so I think when you're in those moments, it's really easy to want to go home at the end of the day because it's too hard.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think the thing is, try a workout class, right? Show up somewhere consistently where somebody knows your name and they're going to notice when they haven't seen you. Be the brave person and see if the person on the yoga mat next to you wants to go get coffee. Try making friends with people who don't know the old version of you and try it out, right?
Absolutely.
See what happens if, even at first, I think it's not, I'm taking the mask off. It's, did I put on a different mask? But does that different mask look a little bit different than the one before, right? Is it a little bit closer to who you are without the mask?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
But I know that still feels really scary. And I always tell people, I told you, right? I grew up here. I went to college here. I've never left, right? So for people who, like y'all, who have moved to newer places, I don't pretend that's easy to start over, right? I actually think that's probably really hard. But when you show up in a new place, no one knows those old stories. No one knows what that old mask looks like. I've spent my whole life in the same community, growing and evolving into each new version of myself. I don't know any different, so I can't tell you that it's any less hard. I think it's equally as hard, but it's just all I know. Absolutely. And so I think when I think about the ways that I have done that, it's continuing to just add people. Right?
Community.
And community.
You need your community. And that was something that we touched on yesterday, for those of you who watched the interview with Lauren, where we talked about the importance of community, especially, as people. I mean, I know it's Women's History Month, but even with men, you need that community. So as you said, if you're not showing up to class, someone noticed. If you're not, hanging out at the local bar or whatever that you usually go to every Friday, someone's like, wait a minute, I haven't seen X, Y, and Z, what's going on? And having that comfortable conversation for them to text you and say, hey, I haven't seen you. How can we help?
Right.
So just having those people who aren't afraid to show up is important. And it's important not only in your personal, but professional life. And one of the other things that I want to ask you, as far as just taking up space, you had a moment where I
think my body just went, oh, no. Okay, sure.
Because it's hard. It's difficult. Yeah. You were in politics. where it can be a man's game. It's very hard for women to break through and to be respected or seen as someone, who knows what they're talking about. So when you're in this world, or even now as an executive director, where the face of the company are two men, how do you take up that space? So where it's just like, this is me. I'm here. I know what I'm doing, and you need to listen to me.
I don't know that I ever struggled with the taking up the space part.
Mm-hmm.
I think the struggle has been, did I connect to, or did I do that in a way that was authentic?
Mm-hmm.
I've shown up and performed as Liz in a lot of places in my life, right? And taken up the space. And that, I am sure, has been something other people have looked at and thought, oh, she isn't struggling. She's got it together. She's got it all figured out. And that wasn't true. I was just faking it till I made it a lot of the time, right? And so when I asked about the Enneagram, my number's nickname is the performer.
Oh.
So I know how to walk into a room and show up how I'm supposed to show up. And I also know how to take up the space. Even little Liz, right, with her microphone and her Fisher Price recorder was taking up all the space. So that was never a struggle for me. But I think what it was figuring out how to authentically take up space and to know that your voice actually mattered.
Absolutely.
And so for me, a lot of that came to learning some practices in yoga. A lot of it came to some practices that I've learned through working with my awesome therapist.
Shout out to therapy.
Yes. But it was learning how to feel grounded, right? Because I would go on autopilot and I would take up the space. And I'd leave and I couldn't tell you what I said and who I talked to and what I was supposed to do afterwards. And that doesn't feel good. And it doesn't mean that I don't still do that when I'm tired, because it's easy to default to that behavior. But I think figuring out how to take up space for me has always felt like, in an authentic way, can I feel all the four corners of my feet in the ground? Can I pause? Can I feel my body lean back in the chair? Because now I physically feel, I've told my brain, I physically feel what it feels like to be in this space. I have a better idea of what I am taking up. And so I know that I'm here, and I know that I'm present, and I know that presence is valued.
Absolutely.
Right? Because the earth is holding me where I am. And so I can pause and take a deep breath and show up a little bit more authentically. And so I guess that would just be my advice to people, right? Whether it's sitting in the car, sometimes I'll put on a playlist, right? I figure out what's my hype song for the day or for this mood or what I'm about to do. And can I take up space that way too?
Absolutely.
I do it in dating. I play the song too. We've talked about it.
I was going to say.
It's not working out. I'm still single, but.
Me too. Oh, that's a whole different topic. So we have to take a quick break because we have to take a quick break, but we will be back with more with Liz. First of all, I am here for your journey. There's so much we have to talk about, but we'll be right back. So keep it right here. It's TDS Radio. have Coach Block here. We are still in our Women Impacting Now series. Today we have Liz McLean. She is the executive director of the Holt Brothers Foundation. And we're actually, if you're just joining in, hearing a little bit about her journey and how she got from point A to point B and just self-discovery, realizing burnout, realizing what you need to do when it comes to burnout, the importance of community, and just even networking. And I think that's another touch point that you had in your story of it's important to talk to people, and have these network of women who kind of know or can look out for you. And I think that's a very important detail to let people know, especially us.
Right.
A lot of the positions or places that I've gone has because a woman either reached back and helped out, or she said something where I was like, oh, I didn't know anything about it. So how important is it for you to make sure that you have those connections in the business realm?
Absolutely. So I think it was probably the job I got really burned out on that I realized that networks and relationships were something that not everybody knew how to do innately. Mm-hmm. So I want to acknowledge and own that. For some people, it does feel like work. Mm-hmm. For me, it's never felt like work. I just want to keep collecting people. And I think all the amazing, cool people Absolutely. I know should know all the other amazing, cool people I know.
What is your sign?
Oh, I'm an Aquarius. Does that make me?
Oh my gosh,
you are too. That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Is it an Aquarius thing?
It is.
Okay.
I want all of my friends to know each other.
And it doesn't mean that I'm always super extroverted, mm-hmm. right? I think I'm definitely an ambivert a little bit, but mm-hmm. I want people to know each other, right? I have lots of different types of groups of friends Absolutely. From lots of different aspects of my life. And I, in a perfect world, throw the party where they all come together. Mm-hmm. They don't all want to come to the party always where they all come together, right? That's not as fun for them as it is for me. And so I want to acknowledge that, but I think the value of having women who are at other places in their lives. And I say other places because I don't think it's about ages, mm-hmm. right? I think that's sort of the lie that we're told. Mm-hmm. I think there is a little bit of wisdom with age, right? But I also think that your peer could have different life experiences Absolutely. And have a different set of wisdom. Somebody younger than you, again, may have had a different set of life experiences and may have done different work on themselves. And so their wisdom and their perspective might be different in value Absolutely. Too. So I think you have to go into it with the idea that relationship and connection is really mm-hmm. important. I think if we look outside of Western society, mm-hmm. right, women really are the heartbeat of their communities. And I really think we used to be the heartbeat of our communities in that sense of community that was happening, not just in sort of gathering together, but that knowledge share. And I think we've lost a little bit of that in mm-hmm. our strive to be badass, independent women. Can I say that on the
Absolutely.
Radio? Okay, great. So like, where's the balance, mm-hmm. right? To know that I can go really strive to be successful and this person that I want to be, but I don't have to do it alone.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes back to, it's hard to do that sometimes with the people that have known all the different versions of you. They have a place, and their place is sort of to be the scrapbookers, if mm-hmm. you will, of your life, right? Because mm-hmm. we all need the friends that you're going to call and laugh about that funny thing that you did in 9th grade.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I have really amazing friends from high school and college and even growing up that I love and are dear friends. And they support you in a way that has this foundational support. They get to remind you of where you come from and where your roots are. But I think, again, that's why I want to keep adding women to the circle, mm-hmm. right? It's like the conga line of all the women in my life. And I want to keep adding to them. And so for me, it's just always been important. I went to a women's college, and I always say the thing that I walked away with that they didn't teach me in a single class was how to interact with other women, how to show up professionally and know that other women are not your competition. Right. And so that was a value and a skill set I left with that wasn't explicitly drilled into me. And so I can remember the moment that connected for me. And so for me, not only have I always been looking for other women who, whether that was a shared experience or not, seemed to connect to the idea that we are not competing with each other, but I've also tried to pay it forward. And
which is important.
It feels weird sometimes to pay it forward because I don't think I'm old enough to be paying it forward yet. But I've got this gaggle of interns that I've had, and I do the math, and yeah, I've been around a lot longer than they have. So I don't know that I answered your question, but did I?
No,
okay.
you did. Yes. Just making sure that you have those people, like you said, that you can reach out to or across the way,
Right.
or even above or under you. Because that was going to be one of the next questions that I had, because, I met one of your interns, which is a really sweet girl, but making sure that you're creating that space for the next level, the next generation, and not seeing it as though, okay, well, by introducing them into this space, their competition. I have to watch out for my job now.
Right. I think part of it is I never want to look back and say, well, somebody younger than me or somebody without my experience, I had to go through some things, so they have to go through them too.
That is so important. Oh gosh. Can we please stop that? I get so tired of that whole, because I did it, then you have to too. No. Let's make sure that we pave a way so that the next generation can reap the benefits without having to deal with the burnout and the stress, the anger, the tears, all of that. So kudos to you.
Yeah. So Shannon, for example, who you met, is a recent college graduate. She's interning with us. She's also touring as a professional dancer, which is amazing. And she's juggling a lot, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I was not an athlete. We can talk to Ken about this another day. But let me tell you what I have learned about female athletes, especially these women that were female college athletes. They come out and talk about burnout. They weren't allowed to be burned out, right? They'd go into a coach's office, and that coach was like, yeah, okay, you're going to have your little freak out and you're going to get over, and I'll see you at practice the next day. And I know that happens for men too. So I know that's happening in athletics, but I'm now on intern 3. That's an athlete. This was the new one's not a college athlete yet. And I'm like, oh, bless. How did me, the non-sports person, end up with all these women? But I think what it is I can see it. Right. Because I don't have that same experience they have. I am able to recognize the burnout. So Shannon, for example, was having some physical symptoms she was trying to take care of. And her physical therapist was like, hey, you can't go do that thing. And so I'm not her mama. I'm not going to tell her what she can and can't do. She's an adult, right? But just giving her the voice from someone else to say, hey, it's okay if today the thing that you do that's the best version of yourself and the best thing you can do is to go take this picnic blanket that's in the back of my car and go lay at Dick's Park in the sun and listen to the Taylor Swift album or whatever it is you want to do, right? Knowing that that is also sometimes easier for me to say to other people than it is to do for myself.
Right.
But I have this sign on my desk that says, let whatever you do today be enough. Right. And it's a reminder to me, but I just have to remember that the voices that have poured into me to share messages like that, I now have this opportunity to pour into, whether it's peers or the women that work with me, or women that are younger. And so I think it's just, we got to get over this idea with each generation that because I did this thing, you got to go through it too.
Right. Yes.
It should be a lot easier.
A lot easier. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it's such a safe space that you're creating for these girls, women, I don't want to call them girls, for these women, because there is a lot that we're going through. You never know what a person is juggling, because we've always been taught when you go to work, you leave it at the front door and you keep it moving, and you got to grind. If you don't grind, you're behind. And when you're behind, you're going to get left. It's a lot of pressure, so I couldn't even imagine trying to juggle being an athlete, trying to work, personal matters, whatever else is going on. So kudos to you for creating that space. That's just an awesome testimony. I love it. We have to take a final break, but once we do that, then we'll get back. We'll start talking about the foundation, and all the amazing things that you guys are doing there. But so make sure you guys keep it right here. It's TDS Radio, our voice, our culture. Liz McLean from the Holt Brothers Foundation. You have been an awesome person to come in for Women Impacting Now for this series, because I love that you are giving a whole different scope of just womanhood and being a woman and being vulnerable, and just how that all ties into the workplace. So I appreciate you for sharing your story first and foremost, and being that vulnerable to our listeners. Thanks, y'all. But I also want to highlight the amazing work that you're doing with this foundation. So for the people who may not have heard of it before, would you mind kind of explaining what the foundation is and how your role plays a part?
Sure, absolutely. It is called the Holt Brothers Foundation, but we wouldn't be here if it weren't for their mama. And so Tori and Terrence Holt started this foundation 23 years ago, but they started it to honor their mother, Ojetta, who unfortunately passed away after battling lymphoma for 10 years. So they spent the bulk of their childhood watching her battle this disease. And really, they'll always say, right, they got to football practice, they got to church, they got fed, they got their homework done, but they didn't have a resource to really talk about what was happening outside of their home. And so that's really what we do. We help support kids who have a parent or guardian battling cancer. And I know we've talked about this, right? This is something that unfortunately, right, hits home for you and Ken too, even as older adults, right? And thinking about what resources do you need, right? And so much of cancer care focuses on the patient, and it should, right? We're trying to get people healed and healthy, but other people are impacted by someone's diagnosis, right? And so for us, we do that in a couple of different ways. We are a 501c3, so I'll be remiss if I don't say every dollar we raise, we need your dollars. Every dollar we raise goes back out to these programs in the community. And I'll tell you a little bit about how people can get plugged in with that coming up. But we have a flagship program called Kids Can, and it is a peer empathy support program for kids with a sick parent or guardian. And I'm not running that program day to day. Tori and Terrence aren't doing that either, but we've got partnerships with local cancer centers here in North Carolina and the central part of the state, who have their child life specialists and clinical social workers who provide this program and this opportunity. And so kids get to come together and they get to be Kim. They don't get to be Kim who sits in class next to me whose mom is sick. Right. And oftentimes they might not know another kid or know of another kid in their class or on their soccer team who's having this shared experience. So it's a place where they get to come and they just get to be a kid, but they also get a safe space to ask questions that might feel really scary, right? Think about kind of in a post-pandemic world where hospitals and health systems have been pretty closed off, except for the people working there and being treated. So if I'm a young kid right now and my parent has been diagnosed with cancer and I've never seen an infusion chair, or I've never seen a radiation room, try explaining all this equipment, right? And the medicine's red and all these things, right? Like to a kid. And so their imaginations go wild and they get really afraid. And so this is a place where our programs let them see those spaces. They get to sit in an infusion chair. They get to talk to a nurse who's there providing chemo. They get to see a radiation room. And it starts to demystify all these parts about cancer care that are really scary. And it gives them a place to talk about it. And now they have a support system, right? It's also giving the parents and the other adults in the home a support system. So that is our main program. And so locally, we are at Duke Raleigh, UNC Rex, the Duke Cancer Institute. And then we're in the Moses Cone Health System in Greensboro in the Triad. And we've got a program in St. Louis because that's where the Rams were when Tori played for them. So we've got those 5 sites. We've been doing that for 23 years. My favorite story is one of our facilitators at Rex was a kid in our Rex program. And she is just an amazing person, Laurel. Her birthday was this week. So shout out to Laurel for her birthday. But her perspective of being a kid who had the same experience and now showing up and providing the service to these families just feels really special.
Absolutely.
And the other way we do that, provide some support to them, is Tori and Terrence had football. For anyone who doesn't know, Tori and Terrence played football. Holt played football at NC State, went on to have successful NFL careers. Tori I don't even know if you know this, Ken, Tori even makes a cameo in a Nelly video, since this
Wait
is
a
a radio show. He is in the Air Force One's video. Everybody go watch it. Yep. It is, so I guess because Nelly's from St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
So Tori's in it. Don't ask me who the other athletes are, but I think it's like a Cardinals baseball player. There's definitely not a hockey player in there, but there are a bunch of other athletes, and it's, it's right after the Rams have just won the Super Bowl.
Oh,
and yeah, you can see it. Tori catches a football, pulls a Sharpie out of his Air Force One, signs it, and tosses it back if they're in a shoe store.
Oh my God. That is hilarious.
I know. So every time I hear that song, I think of him. But football was the thing they had to dream about, right? And to have this goal. And so it's such a tangible reminder of even when you have a sick parent, right? You still have to hold the both and. I think this goes back to this other idea of that is a hard thing for us to do in this country, right? Is to learn how to live in the gray and hold both, right? Culture and society tells us it's got to be black or it's got to be white. Right. And there is no room for both, right? I can't be happy and laugh and also be sad or scared, right? And so that's part of what our program's doing, is trying to hold space for both. I think that goes back to how do we all show up better in the world, right? We got to live a little bit more in the gray.
Absolutely.
And we got to encourage people to live in the gray. But we want our kids to have things to hope and dream about. And so we don't want the financial burden of the parents' health journey to keep these kids from not making it to college. And so this will be year 5 of our Kids Can Scholarship Program. And we have given away almost $100,000.
Awesome.
Which is amazing. We've got 9 students this year who've received those scholarships, with hope that will continue to grow, and are about to see our first scholarship students really that have received the scholarship all 4 years graduate.
That's awesome.
And go off to graduate school. And so we're really thrilled about that and to be a part of their journey. And most of them will tell you that little extra amount that covered books or covered room and board or helped cover whatever it was, a student athletics fee, right? That helped them still go do the thing they wanted to do, right? And kept them sort of on a path where they could go achieve their own goals. So that's really important. And then we also support a summer camp for kids who have a sick parent or guardian. So that's really awesome. It's run by college kids. They've got chapters on their campuses. They're amazing. Camp Custom. And so they do a week of summer camp free of charge to kids.
That is awesome. Yeah. That is awesome. So first of all, shout out to them for all the awesome work that they're doing. Because as you said, we can totally relate to the fact of having that hover of responsibility with a sick parent and figuring out what the next step is. So to alleviate some of that from a child, to allow them to be a child when their parent is going through this, is a phenomenal idea. And with that being said, what or how has this position, in your mind, how do you feel it has made you a better person?
Oh, gosh. When I took this role, I didn't have a personal connection, right? I don't have, none of my parents have ever had cancer. And so it took a little bit for me to connect to that story. But when you take a step back out of your personal life, you realize, well, 1 in 3 adults gets cancer at some point, right? And so I did know a lot of people. At the time, a high school senior that I was close with and worked with at a different job lost her mom very suddenly. And it was around the time that I was interviewing for the job. And I remember thinking, Amala is why we do what we do, right? Why I show up every day, why it's important to create this space for kids. I've been there for 2 years. And so now I've also started to watch our kids grow, especially the little ones, right? And see the impact it's making on them and in their families. And so for me, it took this idea I had when I was younger of wanting to do something that made the world a better place. That kept getting smaller. It went from world to country to state. Now it's city, right? And it took going halfway around the world to a totally different place in 2018 to realize that I could make an impact there, and I was, but the biggest impact I could make was in my own community. So I think about it, if our kids, right, in our program have a place where they get, and the adults, they have a positive experience. They're going to leave and show up at school or work or the checkout line at the grocery store, happy, healthier version of themselves that next day than they were before. And so for me, the importance is it's a ripple effect.
So awesome. That's so awesome. You want me to cry. So we're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll be back. So then you can figure out how to follow Liz and the Holt Foundation. So CDS Radio, our voice, our culture. Okay.
This is TDS Radio. Excuse me, that was me. Battery died, folks. We're back. So if you've seen those lines, thank you for staying with us. Those that are viewing, I fixed it. Back to SoFat Kim.
CDS Radio. Here goes so fab, Coach Block. We are wrapping up our WIN series for today, Women Impacting Now. We have Liz McLean from the Holt Brothers Foundation. She's the executive director. If you guys have been watching the entire interview, you know she has a phenomenal story, just a phenomenal woman that is sitting beside us, and that's what WIN is all about. But the fact that you are with this foundation, we would love to tell our listeners and our viewers how they can help, how they can lend a helping hand with whatever you guys have, because I mean, volunteering is important. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
We need volunteers.
Yep.
So,
and I'm a one-woman show, so I need all the volunteers. Well, we got a team of 4, but a full-time one-woman show. So we have 2 fundraisers happening this year. You guys checked out the first fundraiser we ever had last fall. So that is coming back. So save the date, November 5th. It's a Sunday. We'll be at the Angus Barn Pavilion. It is a wear your cool outfit and your sneakers kind of party with some live music. So save the date for that. We'll have tons of volunteer opportunities coming up for that. And if anyone loves what we're doing, loved our mission, connected to it, and has some event planning skill sets or a drive to volunteer with event planning, we're trying to put together a committee for that. So we'd love to get folks involved that way. And coming up a month from today, we've got our flag football tournament. So I know you and I have talked about this. Ken knows a thing or two about football too. So we've still got room for corporate flag football teams and some individuals, but I think at this point, the best way to get folks involved there is to just come out. We've still got some volunteer opportunities as well. And we've got some individual opportunities. So if they are feeling athletic and competitive, as an adult, they can sign up for our skills combine. We're not going to, measure their height and their muscles and all those things they do at the actual combine. But we've got a fun kind of skills competition day, and there's some fun prizes for that as well. Or if they've got kids that they want to get out there who love football or love sports, we're going to have a flag football scrimmage for the kids, 6 to 17, girls and boys. And then we'll have a skills competition for the kids as well. So, but it's a fun day. Tori and Terrence invite their friends who are other former football players to come be a part of it and help be celebrity coaches. Speaking of women, I'm super pumped. We have Jennifer King, who is a coach for the Washington Commanders and a North Carolinian coming out this year. So she is our first female coach, celebrity coach. So I'm super pumped to have her be a part of the day, and just know she's going to be a great addition to that coaching team. And give us a follow. We are at Holt Brothers Inc. across all social media platforms. So Shannon, the awesome intern, is keeping us on TikTok. So we've got a new TikTok out there today. But Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. And they can check us out there. And all of those things, Instagram has links to volunteering, signing up for those individual levels. So all that good stuff.
And how can people follow you?
Oh, so Instagram is probably the best way to follow me. And I am at McClean Liz. So it's McleanLiz.
That is awesome. Well, Coach Block, we're going to get you out of retirement for the scrimmage?
No.
What about the skills competition?
I'll just be there to cheer and help people out. But these knees are no longer able to do that.
Not happening?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah. For the kids, I'll do it with the kids, but the adults, no. No. Okay. No. These knees, I done told you about these knees, but I'll run around with the kids, but I won't do it with the adults. No.
Okay. Oh, with that being said, we would love to have you guys come out, come and volunteer, come help. Just a moment of your time, I think, would be an awesome way just to give back.
Yeah, we've got a whole hospitality tent too. So all they need to do is show up April 15th out of NC State's practice facilities and come check out what's going on.
There we go. So thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. You are awesome. Keep doing amazing things. And also please let TDS know how else we can help you in your journey and whatever we can do for the Holt Brothers Foundation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And we're going to take a quick break and we will be back. It's TDS Radio, our voice, our culture.